Hello and welcome to Bloke on the Range, and we can welcome to the Bloke on the Range casting couch here, Rowan, who just so happened to be in a part of Europe that was within striking distance of Schloss Bloke on the Range, so I couldn't turn down the opportunity to collab in person. Now, Rowan has been on the channel before, and first came to everyone's attention at the Centenary Two-Gun Action Challenge match, where you showed the Americans how to run an Enfield. So, we thought we'd take this opportunity to talk about a few things with Rowan. I've thrown open questions to patrons and also to supporters on Player, but nobody replied there. So we'll go through some of these things. And yeah, first of all, first Python reference, crack the tubes.
Never say no to a beer.
Cheers.
Ooh, it's a boy. Weiss beer, lovely, a dunkel. Hey.
So, yes, right. First up, so basically, shooting in Australia. This could be a long video.
If we went down every rabbit hole, which I'm sure we're probably going to anyway, but...
Let's do the too long didn't read.
Cool.
Shooting in Australia.
So, shooting in Australia. It has come out of, obviously, the sporting context, and we have the hunting context as well. Licensing requirements, yes, we can own guns in Australia despite what most of the US mass media says. You just have to be licensed, fit and proper person, and have safe storage requirements. You know, a locker and ammunition stored separately. Classes of firearms depends, air rifles, shotguns, manually operated rimfires, considered a Class A firearm. And your B categories are all your centerfires, including our beloved bolt-action military rifles. Semi-automatics fall in either to a C or a D category, which can only be owned for primary production, so farmers that prove a requirement for a semi-automatic. They can't look after their crops or their livestock with a manually operated firearm. So there is some additional licensing requirements.
What are the big pests there? I mean, the Emu Wars, the Emus won that, so...
Yeah, let's just say the Lewis gun didn't live up to the hype in 1902. But anyway, the emus are not the pest. We're talking things like wild dogs or controls of feral pigs in the regions. But yes, you can own a semi-automatic if you're a farmer and have the appropriate licensing and some additional proofs to be provided. Handguns, yes, the only context for owning a handgun in Australia is sporting use, or once again, some dispensation is provided for primary producers on the property who may find themselves face to face with an angry bull that's chased them up a tree somewhere, and things like that.
Okay, because I remember back in the day watching shows with some, I think it was an ex-army dude out in the boonies, out in the bush, with a 44 Magnum revolver on his belt.
His name was Les Hiddens, otherwise known as the Bush Tucker Man. A large part of my persona, well, I've got my proper hat, not this Bavarian affair, was based off him. He was a very large influence on my life, but that was prior to the handgun reforms, which occurred in about 2004.
Yeah, because you've got minimum barrel length limits, don't you?
Yes, so no barrel shorter than 4 inches on a revolver, and a semi-automatic is 120 millimeter, which is a very specific length, which almost aligns with the service Browning. But magazine capacity and caliber restrictions apply, so 10 round limit, and nothing larger than 38 diameter. So 357 is our largest.
Okay, so one thing that people will have heard of is odd calibers, like these odd 303 neck down Wildcats. What's the deal with them?
So they came about out of a need within Australia because, well, not a lot of people had a lot of money for firearms and ammunition. So 303 was the king of all things in the empire, including sporting and hunting use. However, some states had restrictions on, at the time, even in those days. So all these laws I've mentioned before vary state to state because state government. So there were some states that prohibited military calibers. So they found ways around it, either taking .303, taking a thread off the barrel and making it no longer the .303 cartridge, just slightly shorter. So that was a 7.7 by 50. I want to say 7. Don't quote me on that.
It's 7.7 by 56 normally.
56, so it came back to a 55.
Yeah.
So it's a very unique one out there. So sometimes you'll find a sporterized 303 that won't chamber standard 303. That would be why.
Okay.
But the most popular one was 303-25, so 25 caliber neck down. That was very popular when kangaroo shooting for commercial purposes for skins became popular because 303 Mark 7 has a tendency to make very large holes.
Yes, that aluminium or fibre filler tip
Tumbles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the origin of a lot of the accusations the Germans made against the British using dum-dum bullets in World War One. Was actually just 303 Mark 7 does nasty things when it hits things.
And at the time, the medium bores, the quarter bores, were all the rage around the world. We didn't have a lot of supply for places like America, so Australia did what they could with what they have, which was take a 303, stick a 25 caliber barrel in it, take a standard Mark 7 cartridge, pull the 303 pill, remove 5 or 6 sticks of cordite, run the case through the sizing die, the neck sizing die, put the cordite back in, and then put a 25 caliber projectile into it.
Wow, that's pretty crazy.
It was the Wild West.
Yeah. Okay, so that's basically the law section, and rather like Germany, your justification for owning firearms for sports shooting comes via shooting organisations, doesn't it?
Yes.
This is the real Yertle the Turtle stuff. So
yes, when the National Firearm Agreement was cut, so our latest round of the national agreement that drove most of the state regulations with regards to firearms, yes, there was a bit of a win. The sporting organisations had a voice. So to justify keeping what they had, thus the parameters we now have exist. But there was 2 main bodies that came out of that, obviously. We have National Rifle Association Australia, your traditional full bore F-class target type.
like the UK's
NRA
with the same focus of everything must be sacrificed on the fountain of target rifle. It's a Palmer type target rifle for those in
Although it's getting very skewed to F-class these days, which is
as
interesting.
people age.
Yes. And the other organisation was the Sporting Shooters Association of Australia, which was formed around the time of the regulations as a small clubs are concerned about folding. They needed a national body to be a part of to justify the continuation of people's licences. So the small clubs banded together and created the Sporting Shooters Association of Australia. Now, there's a whole bunch of other law associated with that I'm not going to get into.
LORE or LAW?
LORE. But they are the primary body in Australia, of which most people are a member in order to justify their licence either for both recreational hunting or for sporting competition usage. And they have a wide array of categories. Things like metallic silhouette. They have a version of military rifle, or they call it combined services. 3-positional, bench rest, air rifle, air pistol, all your usual gambit of things.
Lots and lots and lots of scope for infighting and fighting between the organisations.
Yes, no one can ever admit to what they need, and then the pistol associations are a different kettle of fish again. But obviously the Sporting Shooters Association of Australia has its own arm for pistol as well, but then you've got state-based and national level pistol organisations, which IPSC, and then you've got the ISSF disciplines, which are the golden standard for everyone apparently, and if you shoot anything other than a flat target at a set distance, you are some kind of cowboy. But we also have cowboy action, which is bizarre because we're not allowed 3-gun, but we can do cowboy action, which is really bizarre.
And so how much of an impact does this have on what particular configurations of rifle you can own?
Very interesting. So basically what we can own: manually operated centerfire, rimfire, paintball markers, and air rifles of all type. You can own an all but semi-automatic air rifle. You can own bolt actions, lever actions. We are allowed a pump action centerfire and rimfire, but we are not permitted pump action shotguns. They are exclusively category C or category D alongside semi-automatics because scary.
It's a bit like Austria has a thing against pump action shotguns for some reason. But
I blame 80s movies.
probably. So like in terms of if you wanted to say own a CZ600 trail for sport shooting, would you have to be a member of an organisation that had a discipline that would allow that, or is it just per broad?
Per broad, if you have a category B license that is linked to either sports target shooting or hunting, you could purchase a 600 trail, which is getting quite popular with us.
Yes, with the longer barrel.
Yes, that is a very odd import thing for Australia. We don't have a... They're just not importing the 16-inch barrel to Australia. They're only importing the 20, which is unfortunate. Dylan has one. He's absolutely loving it.
Yeah, and to be honest, I'm absolutely loving mine, particularly now that I've bent the bolt handle differently. So, I think, have we exhausted that one, you think?
I think we wanted the short version, not the 3 hour.
Yeah, not the full 3 hour blowout version, like
the Lord of the Rings special.
The encore version of Freebird at the concert. So what we'll do is we'll intersperse the Patreon questions we've got, and this one is a question which says, "No chance of a 1 minute all day long demo from Rowan."
What do they mean by that?
Are you going to do it? Basically, are you going to enter the challenge?
If I can get a range to myself and can film it, I've got a contender that would have the possibility. Funnily enough, it's orange in colour.
But once you put a scope on it, that's going to be out of the weight limit. But that's fine. You can submit things that are out of the weight limit, and we'll add them anyway for interest. We've got the 10.5 pound limit as a general thing, but then we've opened it up. We said submit things that are outside of it, and then we'll see. And then maybe next year we'll just throw it over and say just knock yourselves out, and then we'll make categories from what's entered, sort of ex post facto.
Aside from that, maybe my 22-50 that I use for hunting would come close.
Yeah.
And again, that's hand-loaded ammunition, so I don't think that's reflective of much.
No. So that brings us, talking of the orange thing, you're the man who introduced me to the Tika T3X Arctic. And I got one back in 2019, shot civilian service rifle with it in the UK. I quite liked it, within its limitations.
Correct.
So you've worked with this, you've put far more rounds through yours than I have through mine.
Yes.
What's the TLDR on the Arctic?
Arctic. A beautiful piece. I'll say the logical successor to the Enfield. It is limited by one factor: sight radius.
Yeah, agreed, 100%. 100%. I was disappointed when I did a range test at 300 with it, and I've come to the conclusion it's because it has a 20-inch barrel with a 20-inch sight radius, and I've not played around with it with a scope. Have you?
I have scoped mine. When you do that, it turns into a Tika CTR. You can do whatever you expect of your modern bolt-action heavy-barreled rifle.
Yeah.
That's been my experience of it. I've hunted with mine. I know of probably 2 people who have got more rounds down than even mine. Mine's a K serial number. It was actually the first one into Australia. I worked with the distributor to try and bully them into bringing them in, which was a fun process, and then had to make submissions to various organisations to have them accepted into service rifle competition.
That was the first time you contacted me, was asking my opinion on whether it was similar enough to the Canadian Ranger rifle to be justified as the civilian version of a military, quasi-military rifle.
And we managed to prove that it was the faithful commercial reproduction.
Yeah. One thing I find that they got wrong with it is they put the butt too long. Because I'm reasonably big guy, I have no butt extensions. I've not actually measured it, but if you look at the actual red C19s, I'm pretty sure that the butt is shorter by quite substantially, and that I would have one of the extensions in because they supply it, and it's a butt that's for guys our size, and then you've got two huge spaces like that, and some other skinny
1
spaces.
inch, and then there's 2 half-inch spaces that come with it.
So it's like these huge 6'5" guys with shoulders out here, and it's not catering for people who are of smaller stature, which is a bit strange.
So I run mine without a spacer, and it's been fine, including positional shooting, because your length of pull requirement changes whether you're in standing, kneeling, or otherwise, or prone. Dylan runs his with a spacer. Most people I know will run a spacer, just due to I'm quite weedy, quite small. But the sight, once you change the front sight to the Mark II version, so you go from a tree trunk, it looks that thick through the aperture,
enormous,
to the Mark II front sight, which is far more Enfield-ish in its appearance.
Yes, that's a game changer. I miss the ghost ring that they took out, but if I really wanted to, I guess I could get the drum board out. You have, by foul means, managed to get a Mark I rear sight with a Mark II front sight, but then you found, what did you find with that?
So, interesting thing happened. So running the Mark II front sight with the Mark I rear, which means I still had the giant ghost ring, which we all know and love, I found that the aperture was now, to properly align the post in the aperture, I was now bottoming out and had the actual sight ears, so the base of the sight ears, or the sight bracket, was occluding the bottom of the aperture, which implies to me that the front sight is shorter, or the base is shorter.
Which is entirely possible, because part of the problems with the Mark I sight were that if you zeroed it with standard ammo, that you ran out the clicks.
I've never had that issue with
No, I had that. I'm apparently, from the import, I was not the only one. But once they don't come properly zeroed from the factory, and you zero the elevation on the front sight and windage on the rear sight. But to get the elevation zeroed, I ran out of clicks, and it still had adjustment, but it just didn't click. It didn't go.
We had an issue where they missed in the manual telling us you had to loosen the grub screw at the front to allow the sight to come up. Thank you, a friend of mine, Adam Hanley, for enlightening the entire T3 Owners Association of Australia to that one.
Yeah, it's not in the manual.
Not in the manual, no. Yeah, you're going to try that when you get home, aren't you?
No, I'm pretty sure that I remember to do it, because I think you mentioned it back in the day. But I mean, I've got it zeroed from a while back, and I haven't shot it since, partly because I've been shooting other things, and now my go-to bolt action is the trail.
So most of us zeroed ours with the 200 aperture, because for service rifle type organisations, it was the better usage unless you're up close and dirty going fast.
See, I zeroed mine with the 400 aperture with a 6 o'clock hold on the ISSF 300 meter target, so that for civilian service rifle on a figure 12 at 300, which is a head and shoulders target, I could lollipop it.
Smart man.
And also then I knew that if I turned the drum to 300, I'd have a centre hold at 300.
Perfect.
Which I thought was the cleverest way of using those sights. But
I've shot mine to 600 yards in the Australian equivalent of international high power. They can get there, and quite usable.
Okay, yeah. It doesn't surprise me, but yeah, the limitation is the sight radius. I was expecting I can, with the iron sights, I can shoot my number 4 better.
And I would tend to agree that what I've found, I ran a tape measure over it, the sight radius of the Arctic is almost identical to that of Jungle Carbine.
Number 5, yeah.
Yeah, which I found fascinating.
Yeah.
All these years and things still align in critical dimensions.
Because it's a 20-inch barrel, as opposed to 25
on a proper gun.
of the number 4. You're not getting the full sight radius of that because the barrel protrudes for the mounting of the bayonet. Right. Overall, I like it. I haven't been using it as much. It is not as fast as a number 4. The bolt handle position is not as
Not
good
quite
as the number
there.
4.
The trigger is amazing.
The trigger is really good. The way you, if you apply force in the wrong direction,
You will bind it.
you will bind it, which you won't with the number 4.
Mine has smoothed out considerably. Adam's has gone even further. But yes, if you are trying to middle finger it, and I think we've got some match footage from a bushrangers shoot many years ago that myself and Dylan went to, where I do have trying to go too fast, it does lock up on me.
Because little tangent into technique here. What you can do with the Lee Enfields is, as you're coming forward, you're already pushing down on the bolt handle, so that as soon as it clears the edge, it just flips in. Now with the T3X, if there's no force, if you just tip the rifle back and forth, it just slides under its own weight. It's fantastically slick.
The classic gun shop FUD test for how a mark of quality in action.
Yeah, but if you're doing the number 4 or SMLE thing where you're already pushing down, you will bind it.
Yep.
It doesn't like it. It will.
Those front locking lugs are doing that in the raceway and just bind.
They do not like it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a slightly different technique. You kind of need to flick your wrist. Like once you get to the front, you sort of flick your wrist, and then you are opening it against the spring, which you're not on a Lee Enfield. So it's just a slightly different technique.
You've got to be smoother. You can't ham fist it.
Yeah, it is not as forgiving. I really want to see what mine will do with the scope. Mounting a scope, there's a limitation on that if you leave the rear sight on.
Correct. Easiest way to get around that is AR cantilever, or just undo the 4 little screws, slide the rear sight off the dovetail.
And Harkins Schwor says, why bother with the Picatinny rail? There's a perfectly good 17mm rail under it. So he would say, take everything off, take the pick rail off as well, and put Tika rings.
I would stick with the pick. That's my choice.
Yeah. So, anything else to say about that? I just wish it had a top handguard.
That is a U preference, but I've definitely burnt my fingers in competition, particularly in the prone, gripping it around. And likewise, if you're trying to barricade rest.
Yeah, and you don't want your fingers on the barrel. If you're shooting longer distance with accuracy, you don't want to be touching the barrel anyway.
Yeah.
Because that will alter your point of impact. So I think that covers this one. So should we go to Clayton's question?
Why not?
So, yeah, this kind of flows on. So Clayton asks, in your opinions, which modern bolt-action rifles come closest to the Lee Enfield in terms of ergonomics / feel / handling? Obviously, there is Franken rifle, which is a modified Australian International Arms M10A1, I think. But those rifles have been discontinued. So, fundamentally, no.
There's not much out there. The Tika comes close, but it's not replicating those features we expect on a military rifle.
Yeah, and
it's a sporting rifle shoehorned into some militaristic.
It's a general purpose rifle built on a sporting rifle backbone.
Yeah.
Basically, it's
just has military sights and
yeah, and it's got a heavier barrel than you'd otherwise expect on that kind of rifle supplied commercially, simply because you're giving it to people who are going to go and do a military range package and shoot more than 100 rounds in a day on a military range package. So if the rifle in 308 doesn't weigh 4 kilos, it's going to beat the ever-loving crap out of you. And we have people in the comments saying, oh, they should have made it 300 Win Mag and so on. It's like, and light barrel, and it's like, you want to go and come and do a military range package with like 120 odd rounds in one day?
Fill your boots and we'll see you at the doctor's surgery on Monday.
Yeah. It's doing what it's trying to do, and I was kind of hoping that it was going to get close, but it just doesn't quite. I mean, it does have a 70-degree bolt throw, so it's almost the same.
Almost 60, yeah.
But it's got a longer bolt handle, and the ergonomics are just not quite there. I keep coming back to the trail, which obviously the ergonomics of the pistol grip and the telescoping butt are not the same.
But they bring their own limitations with it, and its own advantages.
Yeah. But with my modification to the bolt handle to bring it back to where I brought it, it's now fast. I think I could shoot that faster than a Lee Enfield, and I need to get back somewhere where I can do a proper unlimited Mad Minute. I haven't done one of them for a long time on the channel.
Can anyone afford to burn that much ammo?
Thank you, patrons. But overall, that's not ergonomically like a Lee
service
Enfield.
rifle.
It's fast. It's got a short bolt throw. It's 60 degree. But then it's to squeeze that out, you end up having the compromise because it's got a full pistol grip. So if you're gripping it properly for full control, you've got to get your thumb out, which takes time. You can middle finger it, or you can do the PRS thing in a way that actually makes sense. And with my bolt handle mod, if I'm using the right side of the safety as a thumb rest, I'm right on the bolt handle. But that, if we just ignore the paroxysms of PRS cope, it is a compromise between control but slower on the bolt handle and faster but much less control over the rifle. Because when you're middle fingering, you're getting like 95% of the control of the rifle, 99% of the control on the rifle with your left hand. When you're taking it properly, you've got much more shared control between your two hands. There's far, far more control there. And this intermediate thing, you're reducing significantly the amount of control on the rifle, particularly when you're moving. But you can get back on the bolt handle. And if you want to rag on this fashion
of the floating thumbism,
yes, you even see it on people with conventionally stocked rifles, and the cope is usually, I can get quick on the bolt handle.
I get a straighter trigger pull is the other excuse,
which is like, but forces are not aligned.
What do we say? We were mentioning this before. Heavy guns, light triggers, and bipods breed bad habits.
Yeah, you can get away with stuff. And it's like, okay, you're saying that you're quicker on the bolt handle. I've seen very few videos of PRS shooters who are fast on the bolt handle.
Yeah.
So it's like the thumb's hanging off the side, and they're touching this thing off, and then they're watching.
Yep. If they're watching the round land and then going for it, that's not fast.
But it's like, yeah, there's more than enough time while they're waiting, and while they're watching, they could be moving their hand to the bolt handle from holding it properly. But then you see people with conventional stocks or non-pistol grip stocks doing this, and they're like, but okay, maybe it's that I grew up in a world of 1.5 kilo and more trigger weights, where you want either there or there on your thumb, directly behind the trigger, so that you can apply equal and opposite force in a straight line, rather than having to grip it here and then having all these forces off the thing. You won't see people in the Olympics shooting like that. You won't see people shooting target rifle or Palmer or doing that. It's crept.
Do you shoot a pistol with your thumb floating on the right hand side?
Yeah.
No, that would be psychotic.
Yes.
For the same reasons. It's called a pistol grip.
Yeah. It's crept into F-class due to the PRS influence. But you start seeing it other places as well. You start seeing people shooting semi-autos like that as well.
Mm. Where there is literally no need for it.
And zero reason whatsoever. That is just a dropped gun waiting to happen. Sorry, guys. Sorry, guys. I mean, and then to move, if you're going to move and keep the rifle, you've got to keep moving. I've seen people on video, they're like, move with the rifle, and then they have to get their thumb out, do the shooting, put the thumb back in, move, and it's like
wasted mover.
This is just terrible fashion. I'm going to get such hate in the comments, and just knock yourselves out with the hatred in the comments, guys.
So my SSG 3000 that I use for precision service rifle in Australia, I've just put into a GRS stock. The ergonomic design of those stocks is brilliant. The Scandinavians did a beautiful job on them. You physically cannot hang your thumb over the right side. It forces you into the correct position.
Oh, good.
It is physically impossible to put your thumb in the dumb position.
So we need to segue, because, I mean, Australian International Arms.
Yes.
Their concept of what they were doing, and this is classic small entry into the market thing is that they had a great concept and then their build quality
Let them down.
tanked it and let them down. And then there's the shenanigans regarding the States, whether it's Vietnamese timber or not paying the importer or both. And these rifles have been turning up more recently on the stands at military trade shows as a training rifle out of Vietnam. So I suspect that every part was made in Vietnam and they were assembling them in Australia.
Yeah, there was Australian. So trying to find the information on this is very difficult. This has been pieced together from what I learned in shooting magazines as a kid when they were coming through, and asking around the old and bolds of the clubs, which is never a 100% source of truth. Old memories fade. But from what we can work out, great idea, poorly executed. Yes, at least at minimum, the timber was coming out of Vietnam. You had, what was it? It was Springfield style in the 308 magazines.
They were M14 mags.
M14 mags, yep. And then you had
AK mags.
AK mags.
So they were modified M14 mags in the 308s. And then it's AK mags, but it was very sensitive to the lip thickness.
Yes.
So some mags will run with a bit of grinding with a Dremel. Some mags just forget it. Polymer mags they will not run polymer mags.
They also somehow got hold of, they were advertised with minigun barrels that they'd got hold of from somewhere.
Huh.
Chrome lined. And I have seen a couple of them kicking around in Australia, which was interesting. Did it make the accuracy any better? Nope.
The problem is, what they did is they used a Savage style breeching up nut, which is fine. But the barrels were gash quality. I was into cast bullets at the time, so I slugged mine, and it had two, it was like Coke bottle shaped barrel, it had two loose sections. We suspect that on the 7.62 per 39s that they were RPK barrels.
That would make sense.
And the locking nuts, the barrel locking nuts, were not torqued up enough. And when Simon, who did Franken Rifle, he did another one in 6.5 Grendel, and I happened to be in his workshop when he was going to take the original barrel off the other one. No, it was off mine. It was off mine because I took it to him to have it done. He'd already done the 6.5 Grendel. And he just took a little jeweler's hammer and a square drift and just went, dink! And it went, no wonder it wouldn't hold zero.
Yeah.
It was a 4 MOA gun with a wandering zero.
And that is whether it was 308 or 7.62 short. All of them have accuracy issues. There are plenty of people have done plenty of work to them and made them work. Are they, considering what you pay for them in the second-hand market in Australia, which is now pushing over $2,000, which is insanity, they are not worth the money. However, being a faithful commercial reproduction, somehow they made it on to the approved list for SSAA combined services, which is bizarre when they were considering not approving the Tika.
Yeah, because the difference between the C19 and the T3X Arctic is far less than the difference between a number 4
and the M10 and 308.
Yeah.
Anyway,
so
bizarro.
So you said you had some gen on how they folded, why they folded.
Look, it's all unconfirmed, so I'm not going to get too far into it, but basically importation issues, issues with getting stock and importing it in from Vietnam. Vietnam is Vietnam, and import regulations are import regulations regardless of country. And between that and there was a demand within Australia, but without a global demand and without a really high demand in Australia, it just wasn't commercially viable.
What I'd heard is that there had been a balls up with the States, and rumours I heard was
ITAR. ITAR shut them down.
Timber from Vietnam, and the other one I heard was that the US importer never actually paid AIA for the product.
So they end up a deficit. That would make sense.
And a product like that, without the US market, you can forget.
You're going nowhere.
You're going nowhere. That is by far the largest market. Don't even think about it.
That's like...
It's a single jurisdiction. You can get them in with a single import point, and it's such a bigger market than everywhere else.
See reference history, Australian automatic arms.
Yes.
No requirement, no international market, commercial failure.
Yeah. But yeah, the concept was great in both calibers. The quality of the receivers was fine. The parkerization was a bit. They could have done that better. They will rust, but then once you boil that down, it just patinas and it's okay. The barrel quality was tragic. The breaching up was tragic. Other than that, they were great. I'm glad I got one at the time, and I'm glad I did what I did to it at the time. And now what I was trying to do with Franken rifle has become a thing with the Caesar 600 Trail as the big one, and then Black Creek Labs in Canada.
I've seen them. Yes,
I am working on getting some Black Creek Labs product.
So in Australia, a number of SMLEs and number 5 style rifles are built in 7.62 short, just like my 223 converted number 4, but usually shorter overall because ammo is cheap.
Yeah.
Once they took our SKSs off us, there was a lot of 7.62 by 39 in the country that wasn't selling because no one had anything to run it in. So hand me that milsurp, find me a gun plumber, make this in 7.62 short, please.
Yeah. So there's all sorts of interesting. The thing is that there's a lot of old scrap actions that you can build these things on. People are not bubbering generally. As a general rule, it's not 100%, but as a general rule, they're not bubbering perfectly good rifles. There are slack actions around
everywhere. And just like the Sporterized 303s in the Australian market, some of those to be converted to 303-25 that we talked about were literally just jammed in a workshop vise in the barrel, a crowbar put in the receiver, give it an almighty heave. If they crack the action, it went in the bin, they got another one.
Yep. So don't worry. This is actually a way to resurrect these nasty sporters and turn them into something nice.
Yes.
In fact, we've answered Guido's question as well, which is, are those AAA 308 and by 39s still around in numbers and used down under?
They're used, they're about, don't bother.
Yeah. Okay, so next up, let's do Oz-specific Fuddlore.
Where to begin? Australia is influenced heavily by American magazine and article writers, the target rifle community, which sucks all information out of NRA UK. So we are this weird hybrid blend. And likewise, with firearm ownership being pushed to the shadows of society over many years, you can only source your information in dark and nasty places until the internet arrived. And then we had this explosion of horrific rumours that also coincided with generally, as we mentioned in our previous long-term chat many years ago now, the disappearance of Mark 7 ammunition from the commercial market because we'd used it all. So all of a sudden things like all the 303 ammunition myths that we have talked about at length all arrived about the time the internet arrived. But Fuddlores, what have we got? Some great ones. The usual ones that you find in most countries to do with confusing steel jacketed projectiles with steel core penetrator and thinking it's armor piercing. Therefore, shalt not. You will breach the template and bore through targets and set fire to the hills and God knows what else. That's a good one.
The steel jacketed ammo is highly erosive of bores, which the Swiss, aside from some wartime Second World War production, all GP11 is steel jacketed. End of story.
And yet your main selling point on buying any Swiss rifle is the bore is in magnificent condition.
Yep.
And it's shot steel jacket its entire life.
Yep.
Yeah, it's not an F-class rifle.
And even then, if there was F-class in Switzerland, people would be shooting GP11, just like Standardgewehr, so the 300-meter target rifle equivalent. We're shooting GP11, and if you're not shooting GP11, you're shooting GP90, which is steel jacketed 223.
Yeah. The love of lead soft point bullets. It's cheap. That's why they come into the country. It's the cheapest source of ammunition is hunting soft points. and it's generally the largest use case. The number of people who turn up, but I saw on the interweb that my 223 should be able to reach out to 600 metres. If you feed it good ammo, yes.
Feed it 69 grain Match Kings, yeah.
Yes, if you feed it 55 grain lead tip flat base from a Winchester white box,
no,
you're not making 300 metres. So that's a good one. What other fun? Interesting fogies we get out there. Hand me some international ones, and we'll see if we have them as well.
some British ones. Well, there's the whole thing around number 4 actions and 308 and
and that is reinforced to this day in the NRAA, so Australia National Rifle Association rulebook. So their standard shooting rules that any military action, i.e. the number 4 in 308 Winchester, must be proofed to the lower limit from Britain.
well, the old 19 ton.
Yes.
Well,
we cannot load above a certain velocity because it is inconceivable that the number 4 can hold beyond.
yeah. So the UK NRA was going on about they should all be reproofed to a 20 ton service pressure. That's the way they talk about the pressure proof 2. It's the service pressure. It's that plus the 25% or whatever,
total pressure, yep.
whatever it is. It doesn't matter. We haven't heard of them failing proof. There's no reason why they would fail proof. But there's. It's funny how they're our rifles, but then this fuddery from the US comes back and infects the official organisations and the proof houses. The proof houses' view is, should I, parentheses, re-proof this? Yes. If you ask them the question, yes.
Because they make the money.
It's like, I have a rifle that came out of the UK, which has a flash suppressor on it, which has a proof mark on it, because the British proof houses are unique in CIP, if not the world, in insisting that all muzzle devices are pressure bearing, and therefore are requiring, they're pressure bearing and they're part of the barrel, even though they're detachable, and therefore they are requiring proof. And apparently this gets funny looks from the representatives of the other CIP proof houses. They also claim the same thing about suppressors, and it's like, well, you've got Finland, which are a massive
big no on Australia. No suppressors, unless under very specific permission for commercial pest control operations. They have in some states on a case-by-case basis. So very nasty. Blast shields, sorry, I'll segue across to another fuddism. Let's leave it. Hatred of muzzle brakes on Australian ranges. And I believe, my personal belief is this comes out of the target rifle community, most of whom do not wear hearing protection 15 metres off the line, which breaches all your occupational and workplace health and safety requirements out there. You're blowing dust into our actions, you are deafening everyone, the concussion. The firearm's not getting any louder. It's just being deflected into another direction. Normally that would be going downrange. It's now coming out sideways or slightly to the
Which makes it louder behind and to the side.
Yeah. The overall volume has not changed.
The thing is that we have these competitions in Switzerland where we're all, in the historic comps, we're all lined up pretty close. And yeah, the muzzle brakes on the 57s make it unpleasant to be next to a 57, but it's like, suck it up, snowflake.
Correct. You get a precision service rifle, Corsify, you've got, in some cases, 10, 12, 15 shooters on a line, with spotters standing behind them on optics. Everyone's wearing ears, no one's complaining about the blast. Maybe if you've got a concrete firing point, just make sure your brake is over the concrete, so you're not blasting everyone with the concussion. That's just being polite. But in terms of it being annoying the neighbours, getting at the range shut down for noise violations, or we're so concerned about getting dust in our multi-$1,000 F-class guns, to the point where there was actually resistance against chamber flag introduction in Australia. So right now in Australia, under NRAA SSRs, we have to, when coming off a line, bolt out, regardless of your type, inspect and insert an ECI. there was resistance from certain parts of the community about inserting that ECI wearing out their chamber throats because you're introducing dirt and debris. Insanity. Absolute insanity.
There's things that can be said against chamber flags.
That is not one of them.
Prissy. That is so prissy. And then they're going to use a plastic rod and overclean their rifles. And they're going to introduce crap into the entire length of their bore, particularly in the throat, by using a plastic rod.
I never said it made sense.
No.
It's just what they say.
That's so snowflakey. I'm sorry. That's real snowflakery.
So this is not bashing the organisations. Without these organisations in Australia, we wouldn't be able to justify retaining our firearms. This is certain sects and sectors of certain classes and certain divisions, usually some old fogies who just don't want to change.
Yeah.
Change is scary.
Yeah. There's some great Swiss Fuddlore on occasions, which is often just constructive reasoning just to not allow
something
that's
don't
not
be different.
That's not the standard Swiss thing.
The great one, don't shoot our electronic targets, the Hexter system, with your 303, because you'll never hit it. You'll hit a sensor, and that'll cost $330 to replace the sensor, which you'll be charged for, and then the club will be shut down while they don't have a target. We shot those to 1,000 yards for many, many, many years. And in the space of, 30 years, all of a sudden the 303 is no longer capable of shooting past 300 metres.
Yeah. Where's that one come from?
I don't know, other than the target rifle community having scores improve when they went to 7.62, scores improving more when we were able to use their 55 grain hand-loaded ammunition. The specialist target rifle era came in, and now it is, the target's got slightly smaller when ICAR and things split, but fundamentally, the rifle is still capable of shooting to 1,000 yards within competitive accuracy.
Yeah.
It's just baffling. Will your out-of-the-box PPU 150 grain soft point make it to 1,000 yards? No. See comments about 223 earlier. If you've got a good hand-loaded 303, of course it's going to make it, because you just replicate Mark 7. Or Mark 8.
Yeah.
PPU 174 grain, I've now shot that to 500 yards, figure target, more than service accurate. That's what I'll be taking to Bisley in a couple of months' time.
So that segues us nicely into Rowan here is going to be at the Civilian Service Rifle Imperial. What are you going to be shooting?
So I'll be going across with the Australian team. We're actually mounting a CSR team, which comes from their support for the Precision Service Rifle organisation in Australia. So for the team match, I'll be taking my short and stumpy SSG 69 to represent the team. We're all shooting in practical optic. For the team match, the Methuen and the falling plates as well. But for the Imperial itself, we can shoot whatever we like. So, of course, I'm going to take the opportunity to take a 303 to century range. I'm taking the number 4. I've just had it rebarreled, my Mark II. And it's loving life. I'm loving life. It's going to be a great time.
I wish I could be there. However, since I got invited to shoot the pre-match and work the main match of the Finnish SRA Nationals, I will be in Finland rather than being in the UK. If I hadn't been invited to Finland, I would probably have gone to the UK. You Aussies are being put up by the transatlantic cousins.
The Canadians. Yes, Canada House has done us an absolute solid, which is amazing with regards to accommodation and facilities. But thank you to Canada House, thank you to NRA UK, and thank you to NRAA Australia for allowing us to raise the first Australian team to the CSR Imperial.
Yeah.
It's going to be one hell of an experience.
Yes. What to expect? I think there will be a few surprises, or maybe not. I met, it was either an Aussie or a New Zealander who was working with my mum, and he was a shooter, and like Fulton's was Hello Grand, and I just walked in, and he was just like, what? I'm like, didn't even take your shoes and your hat off? No.
So, what can I expect walking in?
It's like stepping back in time. The place looks like it's 1890, except there's another 130 years of wear and tear on it.
So the plumbing is a biblical disaster?
It's been improved over the years, but it's still character building.
Excellent.
Which leads to lots of discussion. There's a lot of these old buildings, some of which were in fact moved from India, places like that. But for the, sorry guys, and I'm going to get hate for this probably, for the premier shooting facility in the UK, yeah, it's
a bit of a disappointment.
If you're expecting something that is modern and up to date, with modern facilities and modern renovated buildings and things, you're not going to find that at all. It's quaint. I love it. I love it for what it is. But if you're expecting something shiny and new, you're not going to find it.
Well, good thing I'm used to substandard facilities.
Yeah. Yeah.
And manual targets.
I love it. It's quaint and it's quirky. But it's special. It is special. Find a group of other shooters shooting the match, latch onto them, go drinking in the various clubhouses. They'll be more than welcoming. And as someone who's come all the way from Oz, you're probably not going to have to buy much of your own beer.
We'll take whatever you've got. But there will be the obligatory clock tower photo with the team.
Oh, absolutely. And then go and look at all the old bullet holes in it from back in the day. Because there's plenty. I love the place. I mean, I practically grew up there. I lived 25 minutes away, so I was there all the time as a teenager until I left the UK. And it's absolutely brilliant. But modern it isn't.
Excellent.
Yeah, just expect to have an absolutely fantastic time. And just soak in the atmosphere. There is nowhere quite like it. So now I'm going to get nostalgic about the rusticality of it. It's like a little outpost of Empire.
It's character building.
It is characterful, and certainly using some of the ablution blocks is character building.
Excellent. So compensate expectations with beer.
Yeah, basically.
Okay.
Guns and alcohol. Mix
Never
it
at the same
perfectly
time.
Well. No, you can't take a pint of beer onto the firing point. No, No, you need to go to Switzerland to be able to do that sort of thing. Yeah,
not since the 70s in Australia.
You'll love it. You'll love it. I wish I could be there. But, Bisley is there every year. SRA Nationals isn't. Getting an invitation to SRA Nationals isn't. So, sorry, Finland won. So, right, CSR, talking about CSR, saw a video of your team captain shooting his straight pull AR and practicing handling in the standing unsupported position. His straight pull AR has a left side charging handle, and so he was having to reach under...
Almost like the AK reload, but the other way around.
So with his right hand, he was reaching under, cocking it, and we were going, ooh, are they all right down there? Ooh, that's going to be fun in the last part of the urban match where you've got to fire 4 rounds in 7 seconds from a 45-degree start. What's the dealio there?
The obsession with left side charging, I don't know where it comes from. No, we can't own ARs. Straight pull ARs are not permitted in multiple states with Australia, but the vast majority of states they are. We have a couple of indigenous designs, the Warwick and the Oshana Precision. The Oshana Precision is by far the premium product. However, 99.98% of them are leaving the factory left side charging. If you are operating an actual semi-automatic and doing a stoppage drill, left side charging makes sense. On a manually operated action, it makes no bloody sense at all.
Unless you're always shooting off a bipod.
Yeah.
So, why are they built that way?
Customer demand, because
Fuds shooting off of picnic tables.
off picnic tables or mag dumping into a trash pile in the back paddock somewhere, showing how
Off a
fast.
bipod.
Yeah, off a bipod, or standing doing this, which in 98% of the cases you will ride the charging handle forward, which then results in an out of battery, and you'll get click instead of a bang. But the guys are working what they got. There are some Oceano Precisions that I have seen in correct side charging, which is the term we shall use from this point forward. Think of it this way, guys. The bolt action rifle has been around for hundreds of years now.
1840s with the Dreiser.
How many of them had the bolt handle on the left side?
I have had a number of commenters ask, why is the bolt handle on the right side, not the left? Because I've seen Ian's videos and he's really fast with it on the left. And the answer is, he's not really fast with it on the left. He looks faster than he is because he is doing a
Lot of movement. And he admits that.
Yeah. I mean, he's doing a lot of movement to come back off the fore end, have the rifle up, work it,
Before he comes
and then
back
comes
down.
back down, so it looks way faster than it is.
Yep. I have seen some interesting contraptions on military rifles in Australia that involve a bolt extension going up and over the top for lefties. Either live with it or shoot correct side.
Yeah. Ian uses that technique for his kind of shooting. Other people tilt the rifle.
Which a very good friend of mine, John Thwaites, does with his Springfield.
Yeah, and some people can shoot quite fast like that, but it's excess movement. It's more movement. It is never going to be more efficient. And when you watch this guy, and this is going to be the next topic of how to run an Enfield, or watch me doing it, minimum movement. And the less movement you're doing, the quicker you're back on target, and for the same rate of fire, the more aiming you can do. And trigger pressing, you can do the bits you really need to do.
Yeah, the rounds per minute may not change, but you get a whole lot more time aiming. Aim harder, people.
Yes. So that's just the market down there. Silly question, because I'm sure people will come up with it. What's stopping someone importing Schmeisser SP15s or Bradley Arms or Lantax into Australia?
Border Force, import restrictions. It looks like an AR. It's assembled from AR parts. Could conceivably be easily converted into a semi-automatic, so it's not allowed in. So how do we have them in Australia? Because we're making the receivers in Australia without the gas porthole, without the hole in the receiver for the gas tube, and other slight modifications to prevent them from being easily convertible to a semi-automatic type.
Okay.
I would love to see the Schmeisters or something like that come into Australia. I would love to see the straight pull Grand, the machine that goes ping.
Garand.
That are sold in the UK, made in Italy. I'd love to see them come into Australia, but we never will, because much like the US, once a machine gun, always a machine gun. It's a semi-automatic receiver. It will always be a semi-automatic receiver.
You see, slight tangent, we have that in the UK as well, but case law has developed what's known as the parts bin exemption, which is if it's a rifle that is stripped down, has the barrel replaced with one without the gas port drilled and put together, that's once a semi-auto, always a semi-auto. However, if you strip a bunch of these things down, chuck them in part bins, you eat the barrels, and then build them up from parts, it's not a rifle that has been converted.
Yep.
The fact that the individual parts had once been parts of a privative weapon, once they're put in bulk like that, I believe it was a Cotswold Arms case that generated this case law. It's like, you haven't converted a rifle to semi-auto, you have taken a bunch of stripped parts and assembled a manually operated rifle.
Yeah. So importation is the issue for Australia. We can't bring them in, but we can make them ourselves in some states. Some states have appearance clauses. Good old New South Wales, no folding stocks in New South Wales, and no barrel shorter than 16 inches at New South Wales, because New South Wales sucks. Sorry, I'm from Queensland, so I can say that. Always rag on the southern states.
So just like America then.
Correct. Except it's the Southern Hemisphere, so all our rednecks and our Florida man lives in the north, not the south.
That's because you're in the upside down.
Yeah, in Tippity.
Indeed, indeed. Right, so moving on to the final major topic that will run into the last Patreon question, which is how to run an Enfield. Bolt action muppetry.
Hey.
And we have already discussed this to a certain degree in that video we did about 5 years ago. Most people cannot run a bolt action to save their lives.
If you are using that part of your hand, you're doing it wrong.
It's like most people are not working the action fast enough to get anywhere near the capability to be able to assess the difference between types.
Correct.
And that's what early days on the channel did, the Mad Minute series. When I got an opportunity, I'll do some more on that because I've got some more thoughts on that. But pushing bolt actions to the limits of aimed fire, you can see huge differences. And one of the things that came out of the first 4 rifles I did was that the difference, like the advantage that the M1 Garand has over a number 4 in terms of rapidity of fire is about the same order of
Magnitude,
size as a number 4 over a Car 98K. The other advantage of the semi-auto is your effect on target for the rounds you're firing is
More time aiming,
less
better.
time, less movement, so you can get back down on it and aim and release it much better. And you've got the rifle under full control because you've got 2 hands on it at all times. But once you get into running these things properly, and so you were saying that when you were at the World War I Centenary 2-gun action challenge matches, there were guys who were dropping the rifle down to their waist,
up, beat it back, beat it forward. Then on an Enfield, because it's cock on close, you then had this hesitation to push it forward, and then camming over.
It's like 1, 2, 3,
part 4, 5,
5.
return to the shoulder.
Yeah.
Absolute insanity. 2 movements, up and back.
Yeah.
Up and back, up and back.
It's a compound movement.
Yeah.
But it's 2 movements. It's up and there's no pause. There's an awful lot of doing stuff by the numbers.
Like watching them.
1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3.
We chatted about this earlier, and watching most armed forces try to operate a pump action like an 870 shotgun in a breaching roll. You can see it. 1, 2, 3. What? Just rack the fucking thing.
All the way back, all the way forward. As soon as it hits the back, whack it forward.
Yeah. You don't need to give the action time to feed the round.
Yeah. And then palming is just one of these FUD things.
It just won't go away.
And yes, there are times like with a sticky out bolt handle, with a Mosin or a Mauser or a Mannlicher with a sticky out bolt handle.
On the cock on open.
On the cock and open, yeah, you can. That is faster if you slap it up, slap it back, and then go in with your thumb
And roll
slap
over.
it forward, and then roll it down with your thumb, and then roll back onto the pistol grip. That makes sense because that is actually less movement than grab up, but, and then back down. But when you've got a correctly positioned bolt handle, all that excess movement is deeply inefficient, and you don't have the bolt handle under as much control as if you grab it between forefinger and thumb, as per the manual, and pop.
That bit. So, things like the Greek Mannlicher Schunau in 6.5 by whatever it is, with the helical magazine. Beautifully smooth action. But the bolt is about that long, despite having a giant knob on the end of it. He said knob. But the bolt is in front of the trigger by about that far.
Yeah.
So, and then you've got to come all the way back to it.
Forward.
And then return back.
So in these situations, it's less movement. It's less movement to palm it, and your hand is already coming back as you lower it with your thumb. When I was shooting Mosins a lot, I'd get a sort of Mosin bruise where the safety lug would pinch that part of the flesh of my thumb. But that's by far the fastest way to operate that kind of bolt action, which is ergonomically deficient.
Yeah.
And it compensates ergonomic deficiency. And then FUDs will go, oh no, you need to do it like this in all cases. And it just, oh god, one online argument about this. I got a guy who was probably the channel owner, who's commenting under mine, threatened to report me to this other channel, and it's just this FUD guy operating his sporting rifle at a sort of, I mean, he was fast for a FUD, but he wasn't operating it fast. It was mid, and it's like, unless there's another reason, you can't operate it like that because you've got a scope that's too low and there's not enough clearance, so it'll. If
you're not reaching 30 rounds a minute, you're probably not going hard enough.
Well, I've never reached 30 rounds a minute. I think I managed 26 is my.
You've seen my videos.
Yeah.
But that is also with the rifle partially rested. So.
Yeah. Whereas I was
in the
shooting
shoulder,
it
on the elbows.
Unsupported.
Yeah.
On the elbows. Yeah. So, yeah, basically, run your rifles faster.
Yeah.
So this gets us to Timothy's question, and this relates back to the 2018 Centennial match. Why does Indian rifle suck? I assume he says sucks, but the match footage from the two-gun action challenge World War I Armistice Centennial match cuts out before he finishes.
So the issue, which was a lone rifle, I said Indian manufacturing has some interesting tolerancing. The primary issue I had with that rifle, it was full of dirt, grit, moon dust, and otherwise things from Arizona.
Yeah, it had been through a mud test.
And still had grit in it. Part B was the primary issue I was having was sand in 7.62 NATO charge clips. Part 3 was the actual charger bridge itself. So trying to seat the loader charger into the bridge on a standard number 4 or an SMLE. There's quite a chamfer. It's like a funnel.
And there's
you can almost throw it at it and it will seat itself. Yeah. On the Ishii, it's dead square. It was like trying to literally put the square thing in the square hole. There was no lateral. Yeah, you had no scope for any misalignment in the lateral. So if I owned one, the first thing I would do would take a needle file to it and give it a bevel. But other than that, it worked as expected.
Yeah. So I now have an Indian rifle 2A, not a 2A1, it's 2A, it's an earlier one. I need to take that out and try it. I've not actually tried it yet.
Question for you on that, and this is something we haven't talked about. We had a comment on the Issue 4 410 musket conversion.
Oh, I've got one of them too, yeah.
We had an interesting comment that was brought up, something was brought up in the comments section. Check your rear sight protection ears. Are they the correct way round? The one we used in the video, they were actually back to front.
Interesting.
So they pointed the wrong way. They've got a slight cant to them, which seems to be a common thing on these Indian rifles.
So the thing with the Indian Enfields is that they are very, very variable. There are some that are absolutely beautiful looking. The fit and finish is superb. It holds up against anything
that came out of Empire. Yeah.
However, they're not consistently so. There are some that are miserable.
Likewise, their storage was not always the best.
Yeah.
They did some interesting things in service to keep them running for as long as they did. Like smaller modifications you'll see on a lot of Indian rifles, their number 4s will often have an extra screw in the stock.
They put that anything that went through a refurb in India, whether it's a number 4 or a number 5, they put the screw through the stock. Whether it's the original wood or Indian replacement wood, if it's got a screw through the fore end, big screw through the fore end, it's an Indian refurb. And there was a gun shop in Switzerland that was selling a number 5, as in like mint factory condition. And I sent them a little polite message saying, yeah, by the way, guys, that's an Indian refurb. That it did not come out of BSA
In that config.
or Fazakali in that configuration. It's been scrubbed, it's been refinished, it's got Indian wood on it. I suspect that it came out of Ishapur, or I mean, from the markings, if it had gone through Pakistan Ordnance Factory, it would have been marked up POF. It wasn't. The serial number was just a number in the wrong place. It's a rifle that had been fully scrubbed,
yeah,
and everything. And it's like, yeah, it's entirely possible that it came out of refurb like that and then never went anywhere, or it was an Indian refurb that then someone else has refurbed since, and it's like the finish on the metal is wrong.
Yeah,
but yeah.
Pakistani ammunition. There is still some Pakistani 303 floating around in Australia. If you have some, don't use it. The click bang is just not worth your risk to yourself and your equipment. And it's not going to do what you expect it to do when you pull the trigger, which is terrifying with a firearm. So anything that's marked POF, nix it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, that's I think we have exhausted. Is there anything else you have a burning desire to get out?
There's communication. If people are wondering what happened to the DSAR channel, my working circumstances changed, as did Dylan's. It's not that the channel is closed, it is just simply dormant. Material will flow when we get an opportunity to A, film some, and B, do the editing, which, as you know, is quite a task.
Editing sucks.
Both having full-time jobs, and both of us now living in different states, it's a difficult thing to coordinate. But by all means, keep the community going, participate in the shooting sports. If you see me on range in my traditional hat, not the LARP, feel free to come out and say good day.
Right. So, thank you very much. I'm glad we managed to make this happen on this weekend.
In Bavaria of all places.
Yeah, in Bavaria of all places. So, yeah, you were that close. I had nothing else on this weekend. So, we made it happen. There's some more tubes to be cracked.
Indeed.
Yeah, Manuel Kant was a real pissant, he was very rarely stable.
Heidegger was a boozy beggar, you think you under the table. David Hume could out-consume Wittgenstein and Hegel, and every day time was